And it's Lancaster Woodturners Weekly Coffee Hour number 215 for August 15th, 2024. My name's John Kelsey. I'll be your moderator today, as usual. A note to those anybody who's out here on watching this video later on and wants to know how to join Coffee Hour, I'm going to add my email address to the screen when I edit this video. And you got to get on my email list, and then you get the link, and then you can join us anytime you want to. And I've gone to kind of batching up the videos to sort of a once a month edit push to get them all up there and get them all out there to you. But as I get them edited, they are listed on my website, or rather on my YouTube channel, and they also go over to the club website as soon as Junk Earth gets around to posting them. All right, this morning we're going to talk about mentorship and demonstrating, which in my mind are the same topic, but they're actually not. I understand that. We've got a special guest this morning, well, an old friend of mine, and an occasional coffee hour participant in Dennis Belcher over here. I'm going to put the spotlight on Dennis. He's going to introduce the topic, and the reason is Dennis has made a video on demonstrating that needs to be remade. And we want to talk about what topics need to be covered, and get some insight from some of you guys who demonstrate and mentor to sort of set him up for a remake of the presentation that we will invite you all to attend at some non-coffee hour time, sometime out in September sometime. So this is part one of at least two focuses on demonstrating and mentoring. So over to you, Dennis.
Thank you, John. By way of background, I'm in outside of Wilmington, North Carolina, and my home club had a problem. Problem was we didn't have enough homegrown demonstrators, and the budget really didn't support bringing people from out of town every month. So that was a need that we had. So I stepped up, and what I did is I put together a morning clinic on demonstrating skills, and there was a couple of goals. The first goal was to make people more comfortable demonstrating to the club. The second one is to talk to people who do demonstrations, but show them ways that they can do a better job of it, which is kind of a thing that you don't do directly, but you can do much better indirectly. And the third minor one was that some of the things our club had been doing coming out of COVID as we got set back up really weren't exactly what they needed to be. So this was an easy way for me to suggest to people we need to kind of move things along a little bit. So that's the background. The why is to try to get more homegrown demonstrators that could give solid presentations for our local club. Now, this is a 2-minute segment that I want to talk about with you, give you some sense of some of the things that can be done with this topic to make things better. John, do you want to cue that 2 minutes up?
Before we go to that, to your video clip, I just want to just poll the group here and see. I know that our club we mostly do club demonstrators, and some of them are very experienced, and some of them are absolutely beginning demonstrators. And sometimes it's difficult to find somebody to demonstrate who hasn't already just done it lately. We got a lot of people who are good at it and who will always step up, but we always want to see some new stuff as well. Now, you guys from other clubs, we got the same situation. Are you guys mostly doing club demonstrators or bringing demonstrators in? Let's just have a little poll on that first. Club demonstrators, most of you? Yeah. Bringing demonstrators in, does anybody's club mostly do that?
We usually have one, possibly two outside demonstrators, but that pool has shrunk.
Yeah.
You know, it was shrinking before COVID, and it's totally shrunk now. But I know we have something lined up for the fall. And here in southwestern Ontario, we've got about, I don't know, 5 clubs within 100 miles, say. So in the past, we sort of, we'd run I personally demonstrated, and I probably did it at 3 of the 5. I did birdhouses or wood processing, whatever. But we haven't really got that reestablished, and it's still got a long ways to go. I think we're still rebuilding from this dilemma we were in, you know.
Well,
I think,
one of the things that did happen, because I put on the clinic for our club, out of 130 members, we had 18 sign up and show up that morning, which is about 15%, and that's about right.
yeah,
But what it allowed the program director to do is he's taken names, right? And all of a sudden, he's got a list of guys who he can potentially call and say, hey, you ready to do it yet?
sure.
So in effect, I've tried to seed, to self-select the next generation of demonstrators for our club. You know, they get tired of seeing the same old faces, mine included. So
Sure.
that.
So I'm pretty clear. You know, we have a lot of clubs represented on this call, and I think that mostly what I'm getting is most of the clubs are relying on in-house demonstrators most of the time. Nobody can afford to bring them in, and as you note, there are fewer and fewer who are traveling anyway. So anyway, okay, let's look at your videotape, Dennis. I'm going to go to it right now. There you go. Now I'm going to play it.
Theater, what is blocking? Where are you going to be at what time when you say what? It's the whole concept of thinking about positions. Well, we have the same thing in a demonstration. We have blocking. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, I'm going to have a table for my tools and blanks and paraphernalia, right? So here's my table. Where am I going to put this table? Should I put this table here? So now, when I need something, I'm going to do this. I'm sorry. Okay, hear what he said? It interferes with the tailstock view. Should I put this table through the ceiling over here?
Dennis, what's the purpose of the table in the first place?
My tools.
No.
My blanks.
Right there.
Okay. Should I put it over here on the headstock side?
You're going to be a robot.
Should I put the table here?
Yes. Yes. No.
What does the camera see?
It's your best asset.
Or should I put it here? Interesting. Where does our club typically put it? So what happens? Rear shot. Okay, now you don't. Sometimes you don't have a lot of choice. But what you're dealing with is two things. One is, what does the camera see? Is my back to the audience? But the second issue is how long, how far do I have to go to get a tool? So if I have to go all the way out here, I've interrupted the flow. What I would really rather have is quick, not turn my back. I might get a side shot, right? But my side's a lot.
All right.
Let me talk to what everybody just saw, because there's a couple salient points that are important. One is I was in effect telling our club nicely that their setup has been not optimal, so they can change it. Okay, but the thing that for more experienced turners who already understand that point is the method I used to introduce the topic to the audience. I just didn't tell them. I engaged them because they had to think about what they were seeing, and then I asked them to vote. So, you know, there's a couple different levels as you talk about demonstration skills that were embedded in that short 2-minute clip. Now, it doesn't seem like a big thing, but I've seen demonstrations where every time that the turner wanted to trade tools, you know, he was walking way to the back of the room to get a tool, and it just destroyed the entire flow. So that's the type of thing. Now, what I tried to do is to deal with a lot of the nitty-grittiest stuff. that is, you all learn by mistakes if you do a lot of demonstrations, but until you've made the mistakes, you don't understand it. Such simple things as, should I put a hat on because the lights are blinding me? Well, as soon as you put a hat on, nobody can see your eyes. I mean, it's all these little things that we have made mistakes on. Now, Ernie, if you don't mind, I'm going to pick on you for a minute. I heard Ernie give a demonstration at the Springfield Armory in Springfield, Illinois, and I'm trying to remember how long ago it's been. It's got to be at least 40 years ago. And I still remember that demonstration, but it also reminds me of one of the traps that all of us white hairs have, is that we know how things are. The only thing is some of the stuff has changed. So the other challenge that I faced as I designed that demonstration skills clinic was how to say to experienced speakers in the audience, yeah, I know you know how to talk. I know you know all the basics, but you know what? Some of the little things have changed, and you need to change what you do and change how you think about things, because the whole world of video cameras, right, has really changed how a good demonstration should go. And so that was another point that kind of evolved. And when I saw your face this morning, Ernie, I zoomed back. I can still remember that wood weighs lathe, right? And I don't know why it's stuck in my memory this many years later, but for me, it was the first time I'd ever seen a wood turning demonstration. So thank you for that memory. All right.
Yeah, well, the one of the good things about doing something is generally, and yes, you're incompetent, you improve with experience, and experience is the best teacher. So that's part of mentoring. They've got to have some experience.
You wanted to talk on a little bit about this, Ernie. Since you're talking, why don't you go?
All right, well, I've been thinking a lot about this because I've done, first of all, just because I'll go on the road yet and stay at somebody's house, I'm booked into next year for demonstrations in person. And I think in-person demonstrations have come back. But yeah, you have to handle things quite differently. I use 3 cameras for my video presentations, and I use an ATEM to control them. But in mentoring, in getting somebody to mentor, they first of all have to be an affable person that can talk to people easily and can maintain their confidence. And I think they have to have enough experience to be able to show somebody else how they do it. That being said, you can divide turning into spindle turning, faceplate turning, and hollow forms in 3 broad things. And they could be a good spindle turner and a terrible faceplate turner, or the other way around. So where they mentor might be based on their workflow. They have to be a good communicator, which is part of being affable. They should be able to help the person by putting their hands on the other person's hands and showing them the pressures and the feeling of the tools. I always ask if I can do that, and I've never been refused, but by putting my hands on top of theirs, I can show them the forces and the nuances of how you turn a gouge during various cuts. I do think that being able to draw on a blackboard is an important skill in a live demonstration, but it can also work in video by having just a pad of paper that you can draw on. I often make drawings for readers' questions, and they're kind of cartoonish, and they're pencil drawings, but I think a good thing any mentor can do is enroll in a pencil drawing class. They abound, and in 6-8 evenings you can really poop up your pencil drawing skills. And this isn't going to hang in the loop. This is just communicating information. The other thing that I found around at clubs, and I've done 3 mentoring things in the last few months, is the tools. And I get people in classes all the time that have a box of old tools, Sears and Roebuck or Shopsmith tools, and they're
cheap Foster bits.
yeah, cheap. They're pieces of crap, really. And you're just the guy is doing a good service to a disservice to him. And one of the problems is the guy is kind of like buying a car. He buys the biggest one way he can buy, and he forgot to buy a grinder. He forgot to buy the tools. He's out of luck to some things. So I think the tools either have to be Sheffield makers, what I call the boutique makers, which are D-Way, Carter and Son, right here in Cleveland, we have a boutique maker. Also, Hurricane is a brand out there that started to make their gouges in Sheffield, but the rest of the scrapers and everything are Chinese. But they're actually not that bad. Harbor Freight tools are only good for digging weeds out of sidewalks. That's about what I have. I also gouge grinds. I don't know. That's a tough one. Like the mentoring thing we had last weekend here in Cleveland, no gouge, spindle gouge was ground correctly to my way of thinking. So what are the standards?
Back to you, Dennis.
Well, I think actually we're gonna talk about what Randy Smith said. One of the benefits of demonstrating or mentoring is what Randy just said in the chat, which is until you can explain something well enough that someone can do it on their own, you don't know it. Or to take that same thing and change it slightly. You know, I'm very aware is that when I give a demonstration or when I write an article, what happens is I end up knowing the topic far better when I get done than when I started. So, you know, one of the reasons that you all, I mean, this group is a very unique group. You are all very experienced, horribly creative. I mean, I'm amazed at some of the pieces I've seen come up in your show and tell. But if you really want to improve your skills, begin to demonstrate for your local clubs, because you'll find that you will go to a depth that you weren't at before. Now, the same thing happened for me. As I put together a demonstration clinic, all of a sudden I'm starting to focus on things that I had, by trial and error and mistakes, learned over a period of time in a whole bunch of demonstrations. And I think also that what has happened is that the IRDs, the whole COVID thing, there is a benefit that's come out of that, and that all of us have become more accustomed to looking at camera images. And as you give a demonstration, it's not enough anymore just to think about what your audience sees. You also have to think about what the camera is seeing, because the reality is most of the guys in the audience are watching the camera. They can't see you well enough. I'm kind of flapping on here. Doug, you got a question you want to bring up?
I was just, well, I'm not sure if it's a question or a comment, but what you guys are talking about for experienced demonstrators is great. But my thing about bringing young people in is we're sitting here as demonstrators watching you guys who have got 35 years experience, and you've got there's an intimidation factor that we got to get around for people to bring the people into it. You know, and I hope that's what you're trying to do, is so that for young people that have never demonstrated before, get them around this intimidation factor, because everybody, no matter the level of experience, even a beginner, can go through some of his beginner experiences and share what he's learned to a club, because there's other people that identify with that. That's all.
Well, the new turner who's making mistakes today is a lot closer to the turner who's been turning for 3 years and has made those same mistakes. You know, that 3-year turner still remembers what he did wrong. You know, so yeah. But I really, in that morning, I really made the point of
the topic that you have in a demonstration, you just got to be competent, whatever it is. Now, it can be the simplest thing in the world. It could be a simple Christmas ornament, not a bell ornament, because that's too difficult, but do something like a lighthouse ornament. Anyway, but it's really simple. But if you can do it competently, and there are members of that audience, to them, everything you do is brand new knowledge. So, and then the other point is, it doesn't always have to be turning. If someone has a background in color, I mean, I would love to hear somebody talk about color theory or how to use a color wheel. I'd love to be interested in having somebody talk about the use of lasers in wood turning. All right. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be up there and make a big complicated piece, because the reality is your audience, 3/4 of them are new turners. That's the way it always is. But the clinic, Doug, gave me the opportunity to make that statement to the newer turners. And I got some hits. I got some of the people saying, oh yeah, I do this thing with copper inlays. That would be a good topic for a demonstration. Well, he's not a really good turner, but he has one specific skill that is worth sharing with the group. So your point's right.
One of the things I notice over and over again is people bite off too much in their demo. They try and demonstrate the whole making of a project, and it takes 2 hours, and they've got 45 minutes. The key thing for me is to get that demo focused on what you can actually fit into the time you're actually going to have. And knowing for sure that when you're talking in front of a room and demonstrating, it's going to take you twice as long as it took you at home, even if you're demonstrating to one person or as a trial run. It just does. And so I very much favor reducing the topic down to a single focus. Let's not talk about making a natural edge bowl. Let's just talk about getting it chucked properly, and just focus on that for 45 minutes.
Well, and I totally disagree with everything that John said.
Well, I'll say that it's important to stay within the time frame you're allotted as well. The most annoying thing is to be in rotations at a symposium and have the other speaker go 15 minutes late and leave you 15 minutes chopped off.
And in the new world, Ernie, there is a way to make it a lot easier to get your timing right. And that's one of the things I talked about in the clinic is, in effect, what you need to do is to record a practice of it. And then you sit down with the recording and you look at the timestamps and you ask yourself, okay, do I need to leave that out, or do I need to pre-turn that point so that I can get my point at the end to come out at that 90-minute mark where I'm supposed to? We also in that clinic talk about techniques to allow you to hit that time more accurately by building into your demonstration things at the end that can be included or left out. I mean, yeah, total timing is the hardest thing of a demonstration there ever is. Yes, sir.
Dennis, one of the things that annoys me greatly, now I come out of the video production background, okay, you got to forgive me for that, but there is way too much time spent fooling around with cameras instead of turning. What do you tell people how to eliminate that problem?
You talk about remote demonstrations? You talk about live
remote? Yeah, I mean, it relates to timing. I even the best turners, there's only one person I saw that did it right, and I forget her name. She's a short turner out of England or something. There's just too much time lost fooling with, oh, I got to get that camera. Oh, it's not framed right. Oh, it's not focused right.
You're not dealing with competent demonstrators.
Sorry,
You're not dealing with competent demonstrators. That shouldn't happen. No excuse for it.
Well, I think we're talking about two different things. We've got to separate two different things. Are we talking about someone doing a remote demonstration, or are we talking about someone doing a club demonstration where maybe incidentally it is being broadcast out to a larger group? Because there's different things. I think somebody can be a very competent demonstrator and do something in a club, but if they're doing remote demonstrations, that's a whole different skill set that involves a whole level of different experiences, and sometimes they're still on the learning curve on that one, where they wouldn't have the same problems at a club demonstrator with the camera operator there that might be experienced, and they could guide them a little bit, and they're not wasting that much time on the camera.
For remote demonstrations, you've got to have at least 2 cameras and maybe 3, maybe 4. And the easiest way to run them is with a digital switch or with an ATEM. I don't see much way around it. You settled on the Canon Vixias, and I've bought 2 of them now online, and they work very well for that kind of.
That's what I'm using too, Ernie. Hey, Mike, I want to show you something. When I do a layout for a demonstration, this is my script page. You see those colored blocks?
Yeah.
Okay. What really happens as you script a demonstration, you go through the first time and you figure out your sequence. And I write it out or outline it. It doesn't have to be full sentences. But once that's done, I go back and I say, okay, what is the camera view for each of those parts that I just put there? And many times I have to modify the script because I didn't think about where the camera, what the audience, what the camera's going to see. So you got to change what you're doing so the camera can pick it up well. And then once that's done, I go through and I say blocking. Where do I need to be so that the camera or the audience can see what I'm doing, what's appropriate? Now, if you're using cameras in an IRD, you're specifically saying camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, camera 1, camera 2. And I agree with Ernie. Only way to go is the ATEM. It's quick, it's easy, you don't have to think as much when you're in the middle of a demonstration. But then the last pass is points of engagement. So in effect, what I'm doing is I'm programming in, I'm plotting exactly where I'm going to fill a blank spot with a joke, where I'm going to ask the question of the audience to engage them. You know, whatever I'm going to do to engage the audience, that's the 4th pass through the script before I have a polished demonstration. That's what I've evolved to. And I didn't realize what I was doing until I started to put this clinic together. That's the other point. That's why you all should begin to demonstrate for your local clubs, because it will make you better when you get done.
Hey, Dennis.
Yeah.
When you are counseling people on doing these presentations, I'm interested in how you deal with presentations where hauling the equipment in for it is too much painful. So using videos of that equipment versus, I mean, to be more specific, I get asked to do ornamental turning presentations. They want to see me bring my rose engine lathe in. Well, that's a lot of work to just bring that thing in. And a lot of people walk away going, oh, interesting. Okay, thanks. So how do you get past something like that?
That's a very good question. Let me think on that for a minute, because I haven't run into that specifically. Yeah, you're not going to like my answer. You really can't do it. They don't have the equipment. You can't get it there. I don't like videoed stuff. I like things live. I mean, it's fine to, I guess the thing that you'd have to do is you'd have to take your videos and then you would talk while the video is playing. Ernie, you got a thought on that?
Yeah, I'm unmuted, so I don't have to unmute myself. Yeah, I kind of agree with you. When I'm hired to do a live demonstration, I think you expect me to be there alive and not showing you too much video. Now, once in a while, I'll show some video that I made that's 10 minutes long, maybe, and I can't do better and I won't leave anything out. Understanding bowl gouge grinds is one of them that I often show. I show it in-person classes in my workshop. But I agree with you. You've paid to see somebody alive, and they damn well be moving around and doing what they're doing live.
Well, sometimes it works best if you make a short video to show something like Rich's rose engine lathe without you talking on it. Show the video and speak live and answer questions and discuss with the video. You can do it that way and be both live and relating with the video and the room at the same time.
I got another answer. The problem is you can't take the machinery to the audience. So your alternative is to take the audience to the machine.
Sure.
What you have to do is you have to have that club meeting in your shop where you have your heavy machine. I don't know what else.
Yeah.
Would that work for you?
Well, I mean, certainly it would work, right? But at the end of the day, I think other people probably have the same question about, is it just a case where this is just not the right venue for that, to your point, versus, and trying to put a square peg in a round hole too much?
Yeah, you do end up with a limitation. I was thinking, I did a demonstration to the Wilmington Art Association, and I took in a MIDI lathe. Well, as soon as I took in a MIDI lathe, I had problems. That's 100 pounds. And it didn't really work well, because when I got it there, it wasn't fastened to the table well, and I had an out around blank. And it was, I was having to really do a lot of dancing at the same time to get the demonstration to be good.
So those are both things that you could have taken care of. You could show up with a clamp to hold it to the table, and with a blank that was not around.
I never had to take that lathe before. Now, I made a whole bunch of mistakes. Again, it's the same old thing. Experience is the best teacher. Okay, so I should have done a spindle, not a bolt, not an out around. I should have had a blank that was already roughed out. I should have. But guys, you know what? That's part of demonstrating life. It's enjoy the fact that things don't go well.
Well, the thing I've learned about demonstrating is to show up with a lot of props. So you don't want to see me hollowing. You want to see, okay, now we're ready to hollow. Here's the tool I'm going to use, and now here's a piece where it's done. We're going to go onward, because there's nothing more boring than trying to watch somebody hollow where you can't see anything except a piece of wood going around.
I would like to hear from the group. What is think about a demonstrator that you have seen that really made some bad mistakes. What were they? Things that you didn't like.
Let's put it out to the group. Who wants to talk? We got a lot of people here to demonstrate.
I've made about every mistake that's possible to make in my years of demonstration, including being hit in the head with a bowl in front of a crowd. So it's experience, man.
I'm gonna give Don the floor here. Don's demonstrated a lot for many, many years. What do you say, Don?
Two things. One, when we have our club demonstrations, we have 3 cameras, but we have an operator who is a very skilled turner, and he can turn the camera on to whichever angle gives you the best view of what that demonstrator is doing, even to the point of a split screen. Now, I know people don't like split screens, but when you see possibly an overhead angle plus one from the tailstock as a split, you can see the action of those tools. And also the demonstrators we have more time over here. We usually go from 7:30 till 10 o'clock with a 20-minute tea break in the middle. So our time's there. But I'd like to just go back to how one can be boring. Had a master class, and we had a very, very good top turner. And he came along and he was turning a vase, a hollow vessel. And it took him 6 hours of hollowing. And that was a top demonstrator. And I think everybody in that audience was bored. And that is one lesson that I learned. If you're going to do something
boring is boring, right?
Boring as in boring, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing that I learned there was that over here we have what's known as the Blue Peter. And that's where, if you're doing a demonstration and you're going to start off, say hollowing a bowl or something, you show them how you set up on the lathe, how you start to turn, and then say, right, I'm not going to carry on doing this. I'm now going to put the piece on and finish it. I've only got a couple of more cuts to make and finish it off that way. So your demonstration's going through. I I've done many different demonstrations, Christmas crackers, lanterns and so forth. And it's keeping your audience with you. The moment you lose your audience, then you're lost. You must keep your audience entertained, talking. And one of the biggest things that I find with a lot of demonstrators, they concentrate on what they're doing and forget to tell the audience what they're doing.
You know, hey, Don, let me ask you a question. One of the things that I dealt with in the clinic is whether you should turn and talk or turn and not talk.
Yes, you should.
Good.
Now the problem is if you turn and talk, you're not looking at your audience. You're looking at where the gouge is. So how do you handle that situation?
Well, you still need to talk because if you've got a club membership of turners as good as yourself and real beginners, you do need to talk and explain what you're doing with that tool. You may not stop for a few seconds whilst you're concentrating on a particular turn, but you do then get back to the audience and explain why you're doing it and so forth. But you do need to keep that audience with you. If you don't talk for 2 or 3 minutes, you start getting the audience talking instead.
What I find is you turn a little bit and then talk a little bit and then turn a little bit and then talk a little bit, because Dennis is right. I can't focus on turning and say anything coherent while I'm doing that anyhow. It's one thing.
Experience, John. Yeah. It's experience. Yeah, I was stunned when at that art association demonstration. As I started to finish the outside of the bowl, I mean, I was start to cut, and I'd look up and I'd talk. Well, somebody in the audience all of a sudden said, "Look, he's not even looking at what he's doing." And well, which really wasn't true. I'd start to cut, and I'm just going to finish, follow the bevel of the bevel of the gouge. So, but it is interesting. It made me realize that simply turning and talking, but not looking at the audience, is a whole different level of challenge. That I'm not so sure that the turn and then talk, you know, stop and talk for a minute and go back to turn, you know, maybe that's not as bad as we think, John. But what does happen if you do something enough times, you don't look, you don't have to look every second. It just flows. Yeah. You know what memory muscle is.
Yeah, but what I like to do is do a thing and then stop and say, okay, now let's talk about what I just did and why I did it, and then I can show the tool and do whatever I want to do to amplify it. So I'm going to go to Mike now. Mike, what do you got to say? And then we'll go to Bert.
I think I'm going to emphasize what Don said, because he's absolutely right on. You have to talk all the time, and I think the problem. You asked the question about examples of some of the worst demonstrators or what they're doing wrong, and it's that not keeping the airways filled, and it's usually not from folks that aren't competent at turning. The biggest issue is they're not comfortable in speaking in front of an audience. And to practice, the key thing that someone that's going to demonstrate needs to do when they're in their shop, when they're practicing for that demo, they have to tell themselves, I am going to talk nonstop. And everything they do, they describe it. Okay, I'm picking up a 3/8 inch spindle gouge. Okay, now I'm going to switch to a 1/2 inch spindle gouge because I'm working on a larger part of this. And this happens to have this type of grind. It's filling the airways, because if you pause, like Don suggested, for just a couple of moments, the audience will break into side conversations. You lose them, and it's very difficult to get it back. And the key is just you in your shop all the time. Every time you do any type of work in your shop, you practice that technique of talking about what you're doing all the time until it becomes natural.
Mike, I have a question to clarify. Are you guys talking about live demonstrations with camera support I think
Yes.
those two are very different situations.
That's what we're talking about, because most of the demonstrators are not going to be doing remote demonstrations.
We're talking about
So
club
that-
demo.
We're
Yeah.
talking about club demonstrations here.
But a club demo for us is there might be 20 people in the room and 20 people on screen. So it's two audiences.
Oh, John,
One
that's
of
a
the-
good point. That's a whole different subcategory.
Yeah.
One
Well,
of the
we-
things that's changed too, with the remote club demonstration, or not remote, but that's going out to the members as well as local, is before cameras, I used to stroll out into the audience to talk sometimes. I move around and it never lets people go to sleep. When people are falling asleep in your lecture, you know that you need to poop it up some. It's just, they're catching Z's. You're not doing a good job.
Yeah.
I'm not sure you gentlemen understand that even when you go remote in a club, all clubs that I've been in have a big screen up front with cameras pointing at your work. I think that informs how you do it, that you can keep talking and make sure that you have a conversation with your video guys beforehand that you want certain views. Dennis, am I wrong or right on that one?
You're right. And one of the things that I learned again from putting together this clinic, I have not done a good enough job when I go into a strange locale of going to a cameraman and basically giving him the script and showing him the color of box that this is the view that needs to happen at this point.
Yeah.
And I that's what I learned from putting together the clinic.
And when I rehearse in the club with somebody who's going to do a demo, that's one of the things we pay attention to is, which camera do we need for this part of the demo and which camera do we need for that part? Do we need to be switching or can we leave it on one camera? So it's part of your rehearsal really is to figure out the cameras.
I guess I would ask Dennis about this video you want to make next week about mentoring. Would you be better to do it as a straight video? Because I've made hundreds of videos. There was a time when you just wrote an article, but then there came a time when you had to do a video as well.
Well,
and I do them today with 3 cameras that I put on myself.
Yeah,
And I no longer even worry if you can see a tripod with another camera over my shoulder, but I do the whole video and then I put it in Final Cut Pro and you can chop it up. As we talked about, you can put frame in frame. You can actually have all 3 cameras. One of the best I ever did was of my wife weaving. My wife's a weaver. And for something she wanted to show, I show her hands throwing the shovel in the top half of the screen and her feet running the treadles on the bottom half of the screen. And it's a very helpful video for weavers. So I wondered if you'd be better just to make this as a straight video.
Well, I think the problem, and this is a problem to me, Ernie, is I feed off of the audience. And if you go to my YouTube channel, Dennis Belcher, woodturner, there's a posting there of that clinic. It's not very well done. I got a lot of things I would clean up, which is really why I want to do it again someplace. But the audience is very important to me. If I do this as without an audience, I don't know. It gets too sterile.
Turns into something else. Yeah.
Yeah. I've gone back and looked.
Dennis, I've got a question about the audience. A lot of times in club meetings, there's so many different levels of experience. I mean, when you prepare your demonstration, what audience are you shooting for? If you make it too simple, then the more experienced turners get turned off. If you make it in the middle, maybe it works out okay. If you get too extreme, then the younger, inexperienced people have problems. How do you handle that?
Well, I think about board to a vase. That's a demo that I do, right? Takes a 4-quarter board, made into an 8-inch vase. What I say up front, the more experienced turners in the audience, as they're going to be about 10 minutes in the demo, they got it. They understand it. They don't need to see the rest of it, right? Because they already got it. So what I do is I challenge them. I said, take this technique and use that technique, make it larger, make it smaller, make it a different form, not a vase. So spend this next hour thinking about what variations you would come up using this core technique. That's the best way I know to address the problem of if you aim for the beginners, you lose the more experienced.
Well, other thing I might add is you can take any Zoom video, throw it in a video editor, such as I use Final Cut Pro, but there's lots of good ones around. And you can chop out all the dead air. You can even take anytime you said or ooh or ah or a pause, you can cut that out and without changing the video.
But Ernie, what I can't do is in that clinic, I talk about taking out the boring parts. Right, and then I go out to the audience, and I make them repeat to me, take out the boring parts. Right, one guy snored. It was delightful. It was wonderful.
Well, yeah,
he didn't say it. He just snored. Right. I can't duplicate that with an IRD. I can't do it. It's the live audience now. I don't know, maybe I should try with this group, if there's the interest of trying to transport it over to a remote demonstration. But I tell you, that's going to take a lot of thinking on my part. But go ahead.
Well, let me get some other people here. Bert, what do you got to say?
Yeah, well, back to the topic about cameras. And Don and I are prepping for basically a meeting demo. And in our club, we have 2 big televisions, and we find that most of the people are sitting there. And yes, I'm standing, or some of the demonstrators at the lathe, and they're turning, making some chips, so they get the audible of a lathe turning, but they're all looking at the TVs.
Yeah.
And so the most important part for me is get the cameras set right. And we have in a club demo, we usually have somebody controlling the cameras and switching so that the turner doesn't have to worry about the technical aspects of it. Well, when I'm setting up mine, I'm going to do one here from my shop, and I used to worry about cameras. But now I set the cameras up for the views that I think are going to be pertinent for the duration of that session. And I had Dawn come on, and I said, well, here's my cameras, here's my lathe, here's how I'm setting up. These are the camera views that I intend to use. And when the demonstration is going on, I never change the camera angle. I use a switcher so I can switch cameras, but nothing drives me crazier than watching a demonstrator or somebody zooming in and zooming out and swinging angles. It just takes, for me, it takes everything away from the demonstration.
Okay,
Fix your
Bert,
camera angles and then switch them. And that's
okay,
it.
Bert, what you're saying to me is that there's actually a subtopic here, which is preparing a demonstration for an IRD.
Well, what I'm doing is I'm doing it for the club demonstrations as well, because I'm standing in front of 20 or 40 people, and they're watching the TVs in the same room. So basically, they're watching an IRD. They could do it from their living room, and it'd be the same. But they like the social aspect of that 15 or 20-minute break where everybody has a coffee and you talk to a whole bunch of people that you only see once a month. That's the social aspect of a meeting. The demonstration portion is the entertainment part. And so Don and I'm sitting in here in Alberta, and I'm going to be broadcasting on through a Zoom session to an audience in the UK. But I'm treating it in my mind as if I'm sitting in my club location, and I have my camera angle set up for the project I'm going to do, as if I had my own local guys, and I'll be able to talk back and forth. Don, the people in the UK can talk to me, and I can talk to them.
Yeah, thank you, Bert. That I had not addressed that. That's an excellent point. Thank you.
It's like, say, getting the cameras, too much camera movement, I think, detracts from a good demonstration. Pre-planned, so you got good angles, but don't sweat the details. If somebody says, oh, I'd like to see that zoomed in, I just ignore that because I don't have time or the technical expertise to react that quickly. I focus on talking about what I'm doing and then doing it.
The camera angles are actually not any different from the way you framed a shot doing still photography for a book or a magazine article. It's the same camera angle, same framing, generally over your right, I'm right hand, but over my right shoulder, or sometimes almost straight down. sometimes from the front, but the camera angles are all the same.
Quite agree.
Yeah, three
Quite
cameras.
agree.
Doug, how about you?
Yeah, I was just going to say one of the things that people don't. We were talking about these planning, the camera angles, and everything like that. I have yet to do a demonstration where something didn't go wrong. You know, no matter how well I planned it, and I really felt like I looked like a real idiot in front of the whole crowd because of something stupid I did, and that knowledge. You know, you say my comment is good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. But that whole process of being willing to make a mistake and being okay with that is part of the entertainment and also part of what happens for the club for the younger and older people. So that's one point. The other part is that I really appreciate at the end of a demonstration if one of the guys comes up and says, "Hey, you could have done this better," or whatever done. So somebody in the audience that's willing to critique your demonstration afterwards in a constructive way, not to come up and say, "Boy, did you look like an idiot." But you know what I'm saying is somebody that is going to give me constructive criticism to help me for my next demonstration is also really important for the confidence. And I guess the part that I'm considered one of the more experienced club members as far as demonstrating. I've done it quite a few times, but I've never done it outside the club. But I guess one of the more important things is that getting up and making mistakes also encourages the people who haven't demonstrated before to actually pick it up and do it.
Yeah, I have a throwaway line. I always say that, "Oh, that's the first time I ever did that."
I go the other way. I always say, well, you know, I planned just to make me look human. I mean, you know, humor diffuses. Take ownership of all mistakes.
Yeah.
And say, you know, it's purposely that I did this just so because you're going to do it too. So now you know what you're supposed to do. Just don't do what I did. I mean, just humor is a great thing to use, Doug.
Hey, the other thing that would be fun
Agreed.
is to have a narrator narrate you who are doing the turning, don't talk at all. Have somebody else narrate what you're doing and just make it a different perspective, to add some interest. So
that's a way of doing it. The other way is to have an interlocutor, as I did with Ziegler when he did his demo last couple of weeks ago. I was always ready with a lot of questions, and liberally interrupted him with telling questions because I knew some points that he could make or wanted to make or that we talked about making. So I gave him the opening he needed to take the conversation in another direction by asking a pertinent question.
Oh, hey, one of the point I want to make to the group, you know, you got to be careful. There are a lot of mediocre demonstrators out there, you know, and I think sometimes what I try to do is when I see a demonstration, I'm looking at it two different levels. One is what's he making? What's he trying to teach me? The second is what speaking techniques, demonstrating techniques is he using that are good? Because those I want to kind of meld into my library, right? And what kind of stuff has he done as a demonstrator where the technique is really bad? Because again, I want to build those in the pit of my knowledge base. You know, that really does make a difference over time. But you got to realize, guys, all of us have done public speaking, but nobody has really had training to be a demonstrator. And a question in my mind is, you know, what is a good way to foster teaching people how to be good demonstrators?
Okay, let's hear from the room.
I'm sorry, John, in reference to John and Jim's comment a few conversations ago, we had one of the best videos I think I've ever seen done by two people. They were both turners. They were both knowledgeable, but it filled in the blank places. It left the turner turn. It left the commentator communicate. And it just never stopped. And you did not lose the audience because there was something always going on. And I've never seen that done in all the demonstrations I've ever seen. That's always just one person trying to do everything. And if the two people sharing where they're both knowledgeable, not competing,
just there to entertain and there to make a good video. I've never seen people do that in any known quantity, and I thought it should be mentioned before we got too far along.
Very good point.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Hey, Doug, I'll go back. You know, if you want to engage an audience, it doesn't have to be talking. You know, it can also be movement. So when Al Sturt gives a demonstration on blow turning, he doesn't talk much at all. You know, he always wears a face shield. But what happens, he has these marvelous strings of shavings coming off that lathe. And if you look at the eyes in the audience, they're all awake because they're all following those streaming turnings. So you can use movement. It doesn't always have to be move your mouth. It can be movement in any other way.
Well, let's get it away from Carl's point, though, of the collaboration of the speaker and the demonstrator. I think that's a hell of a good point. That's kind of what Ziegler and I were knocking on, and then I got out of his way and left it mostly with him.
And I think John, part of that, I think, is that collaboration, not only during, but in the preparation. I think you did some of that with John, working together to help a new demonstrator and giving them feedback as they go through and practice. And then the ones that have been terrible are the new ones that are thrown to the wolves. You know, somebody twists their arm, oh, you could demonstrate this. And then they leave them on their own to flounder, and it's such a bad experience. They don't ever, you know, it's like a cat won't sit on a hot stove, but he won't sit on a coal stove again either.
Yep, exactly right.
Hey,
okay,
John.
we got a couple of minutes. Yeah, who was that?
It's Carl.
Yeah,
Just to follow on with the comments that have just been made along Mike's path and a few others. One of the things that I've noticed at Lancaster, there's a nice video setup, and there's time that's taken to show the director how to do it and to bring new people along. So there's always someone available to step up. And then at Keystone, the club that I currently run, we have a video team. We have several camera operators ready to jump in if need be. But we are always trying to help the demonstrators who are in-house to grow and to be friendly, but we really engage with them. And one thing I can tell you with public speaking and keeping your audience is move something, speak louder for a moment, get quieter for a moment, speak louder, but make it a conscious effort on your part, because the doldrums are two things are driving that you don't have control: room temperature and the monotony of your voice and the machine. So you can change that with your voice or dropping something or, you know, shiny object. But those are nice, exactly, Dennis, very easy ways to do it without being overt. And that really helps, along with the funny jokes and the dad jokes and the uncle jokes and the, you know, look at the naked picture jokes. All of those things help, but there you go. All of those little things really, really make a difference. And then critique. And if you have experienced turners in the group who are willing to help the new demonstrators, literally go up and help them. If the turner or the demonstrator is willing, that's really helpful for the demonstrator, and they will become better demonstrators and better people. That's all right.
Can I just say one last thing?
Yeah,
we
you got the
had a
last
demonstrator come to us, and we told them what lathe we had. And when they came, their shoulder was only 3 inches above the center of the lathe. And they tried to do a demonstration, and we've now decided within the club to make certain that we know the height of the person who's coming, to make certain that the lathe is in a height that they can use. Because it's worse than getting there, and they're trying to turn, and their hands are up here to the center of the lathe, because the center of the lathe is their shoulder.
All the more reason to rehearse before you go on live. And with that, we've come to the end of the coffee hour. Dennis, thank you for joining us today. And thank you all for your participation and for your attention. And we'll see you all next week when we'll go back to our usual show and tell format.
Wood shop. Thank God for wood.